sticky bomb was one of those extraordinary weapons developed in the early part of the Second World War.
You broke it out of its container and you threw it up against a tank and it stuck.
A grenade that sticks to tanks, a battlefield weapon inspired by candy, and a war so desperate even bird glue became part of the arsenal. This is the bizarre, explosive story of the sticky bomb, one of World War II's strangest and most controversial inventions. The name sticky bomb sounds like something out of a comic book or maybe a prank gone wrong. But back in 1940, it was anything but a joke. Britain had just pulled off a miracle at Dunkirk, but it came at a huge cost. Most of the army's heavy weapons, especially anti-tank guns, had been left behind. Over 800 of them gone. What little remained back home was barely enough to arm a few divisions. Ammunition was in such short supply that soldiers couldn't even practice, and with a German invasion looking more and more likely, the pressure was on to come up with something, anything, that could stop enemy tanks from rolling across the countryside. That's when Stuart McCrae stepped in. He wasn't a soldier or a weapons expert, he was a science writer, editor of Armchair Science, a magazine full of wild inventions and curious experiments. Not exactly MI6 material, but sometimes inspiration strikes in the strangest ways. While visiting a friend, McCrae helped the kid pick up a jar of aniseed balls that had spilled on the floor. He popped one in his mouth, and as it slowly dissolved, he had thought, what if you could use something like this, something that melted at a predictable pace, as a fuse? Not much to go on, but in wartime Britain, every odd idea was worth a second look. At that same moment, Major Millis Jeffress was developing a special type of mine that could attach itself to enemy ships using magnets. He called it the limpet mine, after the little sea creatures that cling to rocks. The mine needed a timer that was both simple and reliable, something cheap, something clever. That's when he crossed paths with McCrae. When McCrae shared his aniseed ball theory, Jeffress was intrigued. They tested it out. Placed the candy between a spring and a detonator, let it melt, and boom, the perfect delay. It was weird, it was unlikely, but it worked. The limpet mine didn't sit around waiting for its moment, and it was used right away. In a daring mission called Operation Jaywick, a team of British and Australian commandos paddled through the darkness into Singapore harbor. Armed with these small magnetic mines, they stuck them onto Japanese ships while the enemy slept. Then, just as quietly, they vanished back into the night. By morning, 7 Japanese vessels were either sunk or badly damaged. The raid was bold, quiet, and devastating, and it got noticed by one man in particular, Winston Churchill. Churchill didn't just tolerate unusual weapons, he loved them. As soon as he saw what the limpet mine could do, he wanted more. More strange, creative, unpredictable tools of war. So he gave Jeffress and McCrae their own department and told them to get to work. The place became known, half as a joke, half and all, as Churchill's Toy Shop. And the toys that came out of it were unlike anything the military had seen before. There were blow-up tanks designed to fool German spotters, floating devices that made fake ship noises to confuse torpedoes, even a bomb filled with poison-tipped needles, meant to rain death from above. But out of all the odd inventions that came out of the toy shop, one stood out: the sticky bomb. Its full name was the No. 74 anti-tank grenade, but everyone just called it what it was: a bomb that stuck. The heart of the design was a glass ball filled with a thick jelly-like nitroglycerin. The whole thing was wrapped in wool and coated in an extra ultra-sticky glue called birdlime, to keep it from latching onto everything before it was needed. The ball was hidden inside a metal casing. When it was time to use it, a soldier would screw on the bakelite handle, remove the shell, pull a safety pin to expose the sticky surface, then pull a second pin to arm it. The moment they let go of the handle, the fuse kicked in. 5 seconds until explosion. Simple enough on paper, but in practice, it was a nightmare. The glue was so sticky it didn't care what it grabbed. Uniforms, hands, nearby equipment, anything it touched, it stuck to. One home guard training session turned into panic when a soldier accidentally got the bomb stuck to his leg. He tried to yank it off, but wouldn't budge. With a timer ticking, a fellow recruit lunged in, tore off the man's trousers, and threw the bomb just in time. The pants were destroyed. The soldier was shaken, but he lived. And from that moment on, the sticky bomb earned a reputation not just as a weapon, but as a serious hazard to anyone holding it. Soldiers were trained to either toss the sticky bomb gently or, better yet, walk right up and press it onto a tank. Theoretically, you could throw it from 20 yards away, but in real battle conditions that almost never worked. The best results came from close contact. Really close. The plan usually went something like this. Hide in a trench or behind a wall, wait until the tank rumbled by, then run out and slap the bomb onto a vulnerable spot, like the back or underside. But there was a catch. If the tank was even slightly dirty, coated in dust, streaked with mud, or slick with rain, the glue didn't hold. And most tanks in the field weren't exactly squeaky clean. More than a few bombs bounced right off, landing harmlessly on the ground or worse, putting the bomber in immediate danger. Still, Churchill didn't budge. He believed in the sticky bomb, maybe more than anyone else. While engineers and military advisors raised red flags, Churchill pushed forward. In one short memo, he made his position crystal clear. Sticky bomb. Make 1 million. He wasn't thinking just in terms of standard military tactics. He imagined everyday people, Home Guard volunteers, shopkeepers, farmers, grabbing one of those and taking on a tank if it came to that. You can always take one with you, he said. It was grim, but in his mind, it was better than doing nothing. The War Office, however, wasn't sold. The Ordnance Board rejected the idea for regular troops. Early versions were fragile, prone to leaking, and nearly impossible to rely on in bad weather. But Churchill's influence was strong. He ordered further testing, and the team went back to the drawing board. The glass was replaced with plastic. The explosive mixture was made thicker and more stable. The fuse got some upgrades too. Even with these improvements, the rollout was slow. By mid-1941, the sticky bomb was still sitting in storage, untested in real combat by most units. Eventually, things changed. The updated Mark II model passed enough inspections to be officially approved. Between 1940 and 1943, about 2.5 million sticky bombs were made. Most were handed out to the Home Guard, who trained to use them in case tanks ever rode through British villages or farmland. But not all of them stayed in Britain. Some made their way to the front lines. In North Africa, South African soldiers used them in desperate battles, taking out enemy tanks at close range. Australian troops brought them deep into the jungles of New Guinea, using ambush tactics in terrain that made traditional anti-tank weapons hard to deploy. Even the French resistance got their hands on them, using sticky bombs to damage German supply trucks and create chaos behind enemy lines. Even with all the tweaks and redesigns, the sticky bomb never really shook off its issues. If a tank had even a thin coat of grime or dried mud, the glue could fail instantly. Soldiers had to be constantly warned not to let the adhesive touch their uniforms, weapons, or gear. But that didn't stop mishaps from happening. It didn't take long for people to get creative. Some lowered the bombs from rooftops using bits of string, hoping to land them right on top of the tank where the armor was weaker. Others tucked them into sacks with long pull cords so they could stick them in place and trigger the fuse from a safe distance. Australian troops especially got a reputation for walking straight up to enemy vehicles, planting the bomb by hand, and turning their backs just in time, carefully angling the handle away so it wouldn't fire back at them when it blew. But even with all this effort, the sticky bomb never became a go-to weapon. It wasn't reliable enough to be standard issue. It wasn't safe enough to be used casually. Most of the time, it was safe for moments when there were no better options left. And even then, the risks weren't just on the battlefield. Over time, the nitroglycerin inside could break down, making the bombs dangerously unstable. In one case, decades after the war, a forgotten stash of sticky bombs was found buried in a railway in Aldershot. The bombs had fused together, and they were so volatile that just touching them would have triggered an explosion. 2 members of the Royal Army Ordnance Corps were called in to deal with the situation. They pulled it off and were later awarded the George Medal for their bravery. The story of the sticky bomb didn't wrap up neatly with the end of the war. In the late 1940s, a Royal Commission reviewed claims from people involved in its development. Stuart McCrae didn't ask for much. He made it clear that he didn't invent the sticky bomb, he just helped bring it to life. Even so, he was awarded £500 for his work. Gordon Norwood, The man who had helped figure out how to make the thing actually stick was granted £250. Neither payment was huge, but both were acknowledgments of how strange and urgent those war years had been. Looking back, the sticky bomb wasn't just another odd weapon. It represented something bigger, a moment in history when scientists, inventors, and soldiers were forced to think fast and act even faster. So what do you think? Was the sticky bomb an ingenious last resort or a dangerously flawed fantasy? Could Britain have held the line with more weapons like it, or did it only prove how desperate things really were? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this strange chapter of World War II history, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.